So there are mechanism that kind of impacts the mean arterial blood pressure, right? So one of the main important thing is the reflex arc that actually influences blood pressure. Okay. And this is the baroreceptor reflex arc. What is baroreceptor? Baroreceptors are small little tiny receptors that is located on the walls of blood vessels, and particularly we see these on aorta or the arteries. Okay. So what happens? Suppose your blood pressure is in normal range, this whole thing will be fine. But if your blood pressure changes, the baroreceptor is going to, because it detects blood pressure change, it's going to detect that. And that is going to be picked up, impulses from the baroreceptor is going to be picked up by brain. And as soon as that does that, it will stimulate the cardio inhibitory center, because your blood pressure is high, so your cardiac activity needs to go down. Immediately the sympathetic activity will go down, making sure your heart rate, cardiac output, everything is going down, so that blood pressure is restored. And at the same time, this will also rate of vasomotor impulses will go down. Suppose your blood pressure is low, same thing will happen. Baroreceptor is going to detect that, and now the brain will also brain will also obviously detect that from the receptor. But instead of the inhibitory center, now the cardio acceleratory center will be activated, because your blood pressure is low. So your sympathetic activity will go up, your heart rate, cardiac output, everything will go up, so that the homeostasis balance is maintained. So important thing is, first the stimulus, then baroreceptor, then if your blood pressure is high, then inhibitory center will increase, will actually start working, so that your cardiac output is anything related to sympathetic nervous system activity will decrease. So heart rate, cardiac output will decrease. And exactly this opposite thing will happen if you have low blood pressure. Other than that, couple of other things that can also impact, for example, if you have high amount of carbon dioxide, or pH is dropped, like your blood is too much acidic, then that also is a kind of will impact the blood pressure slash blood flow. Higher blood centers, reflexes that generate BP are found in medulla, so they will be impacted. Hypothalamus cerebral cortex can also modify arterial pressure with the help of medulla. Hypothalamus increases blood pressure when we are stressed. Hypothalamus mediates redistribution of blood when you're exercising, when you're running, and then that also changes our body temperature. So these are a couple of factors that can also, for short time, can impact our blood flow slash blood pressure. Other than that, there are a couple of hormones like adrenal medulla hormones, epinephrine, norepinephrine from adrenal gland, can increase cardiac output also, sympathetic activity. Angiotensin, ADH can do vasoconstriction, that will increase blood activity, blood pressure. ANP, this is a hormone that is secreted from the heart. It also decreases blood pressure when it is like basically required. So you need to know the name of these hormones. For example, norepinephrine, angiotensin, ADH, ANP. These are the hormones that can specifically impact the blood pressure. All right. Now, what is the long-term control? This is done. This is done by renal regulation. Two methods: direct and indirect. So, what is the direct and indirect method? Direct method. Suppose you have low blood pressure, plain and simple. Then your filtration by kidneys will go down, because you need blood now in your body. So therefore, kidney will reduce its filtration. So urine output will go down. As a result, you will restore your blood volume, so the mean arterial pressure will again go back to normal. So this is a direct mechanism. What's the indirect mechanism? Here they will take help, the kidney will still do it, but it will going to take help from different hormones. Your blood pressure is low, the baroreceptors are inhibited, so sympathetic activity, you need to be active now, so sympathetic activities will go up. Renin will start releasing some hormones. I mean, kidney will start first of all releasing a hormone called renin. Renin will do some like lots of intermediate activity, and finally it will start creating another set of hormone called as angiotensin. So first renin with some intermediate activity, then it will start creating angiotensin, specifically angiotensin 2. Now what will this do? Firstly will impact the adrenal cortex, then it will start creating aldosterone, so your sodium absorption will increase. It will directly impact the posterior pituitary, so that ADH is more released. That will create more water reabsorption. Your thirst, your brain center for thirst will actually be stimulated, so you actually start drinking more water, and vasoconstriction will also increase, right? So all these factors will actually impact your blood volume, then the mean arterial pressure will increase. So this is not so much so direct activity, so your sympathetic, this is done with the help of sympathetic nervous system activity. So when sympathetic nervous system is active, in this case if you have low blood pressure, then renin and angiotensin will start secreting. Four target areas that these angiotensin will target. Firstly, adrenal cortex, so that you can have more aldosterone. Remember, the function of aldosterone is to create more sodium absorption. ADH will start creating. ADH is involved in water reabsorption. So aldosterone, ADH, the thirst center of your body in hypothalamus will actually be activated, so that you drink more water, and then finally vasoconstriction. So I'm not going to ask you the entire flow mechanism, but you need to know what is this process, why sympathetic nervous system is active here, what are the hormones, renin, angiotensin, and what are the target areas that indirect renal mechanism actually can target. Okay, the goal for both process is to increase your blood volume, so that the blood pressure is restored. This is the basically the summary of what we just discussed. What are the all factors that can actually increase your MAP? All right, so quick check. If you have a blood pressure of 110 by 80, what is your pulse pressure? It's simply the difference between the two, and then you calculate the MAP. We discussed this in detail, so go back in a couple of slides and do that. How MAP and pulse pressure changes with increasing distance from heart? Simply it will decline, right? More the you will go away from your heart, your blood pressure is going to decline always. What is the homeostatic imbalance in terms of blood pressure? Basically, blood pressure can create hypertension or hypotension. Okay, there is no specific reason for that, but this can be influenced by age, sex, weight, race, mood. What are you doing? Like, are you working? Are you exercising? That also can impact BP. For example, primary hypertension. So this means you have elevated arterial pressure of 140 by 90. We can have a pre-hypertension range, means it's there, but it's not yet in this completely in hypertension. Sometimes you're hypertense, but not all the time. But if you're completely a person is in hypertension, then this condition will be a sustaining condition. No as such particular reason, but the reason can be heredity, diet, obesity, age, even diabetes, stress, all of that. So basically self-care is the main way to deal with it. Restrict salt, so that your aldosterone is not like absorbing too much of sodium. Exercise, lose weight, and maybe some drugs also. Secondary hypertension is very uncommon thing due to identifying disorders in kidney, because your whole mechanism, the whole balance mechanism we just discussed, that can actually get disrupted by this. But this is a very uncommon thing. Hypotension means you have really low blood pressure, 90 to 60. This is not a huge concern, because it's okay to have low blood pressure, but as long as you're not, it's like not dropping too low so that you will feeling dizzy. If that happens, then that could be a constant. For example, if you have orthostatic hypotension, means you have low blood pressure temporarily, so you're suddenly like standing from a sitting position or a lying down position, you suddenly can feel dizzy. Okay, chronic hypotension means it's like lasting for a long time, means probably you have poor diet or something like that. Circulatory shock, when the blood vessels inadequately fill and cannot circulate normally. Okay, so that cannot meet the tissue needs rather, so that's called circulatory shock. In the last part we will talk about mainly about blood flow. starting from capillary exchange, bulk flow, how blood flows through pulmonary circuit, systemic circuit, and finally we'll talk about some important blood vessels in our body. Okay, so how blood flow is controlled in our body is basically a function of two things: extrinsic control or intrinsic control. Extrinsic control means something that is control of blood flow in an organ, but that is controlled by something else, something outside of that organ. For example, certain nerves controlling blood flow in that organ, or some hormones controlling that. Or intrinsic, exactly the opposite thing, that is controlling the blood flow that is inside, basically auto-regulated, whatever is happening inside. For example, let's suppose stroke volume in a heart. So how much is the stroke volume of heart in outside? It can be controlled by nervous system, of course, basically, or certain hormones can control it, as well as it will also be controlled, also be a factor of blood vessels. So blood vessels play a very important role in there, which is not exactly a part of the heart itself. Intrinsically, what will control it? For example, there is a auto-regulation, a local control, which is basically the auto-regulation or auto-rhythmic process that happens in the heart that will control the stroke volume. Another example, suppose your skeletal muscles at rest, when you are not doing anything strenuous activity, then it receives 20% of the total blood. But when you are doing certain activity, then blood is redirected and goes into the skeletal muscles more, and then you have 70% of the total blood flow. Okay, what are the intrinsic controls in this case? The skeletal muscle itself, the vessels inside, the arterioles inside, right, they will dilate so that they can accommodate more blood that is coming. Extrinsic control, for example, like other organs like kidneys, digestive organs, so kidneys will start filtering more blood, like retaining more blood actually, and more blood will be directed from the digestive system to the skeletal muscles, right? Although MAP is maintained during this redistribution as well. Like wherever the blood is getting distributed, the mean arterial pressure of the entire body is still maintained. Um, and then skeletal muscles blood flow varies with the fiber type and activity. At rest, for example, myogenic and neural mechanisms predominate and maintain a flow of 1 liter per minute. If you are active or exercising and doing hyperemia during muscle activity, blood flow increases and direct proportion that is directly related to the metabolic activity. All right, for example, you are exercising, in that case your oxygen content in the blood will be low in skeletal muscles, carbon dioxide will be higher, more hydrogen means it can become more like acidic, and other metabolic products will increase. So in that case, so that this does not get into a toxic form, the arterioles will like dilate, right? And in that case, more blood will be drawn towards that area. More blood means these conditions will be diluted, so increase in carbon dioxide will be diluted, right? So the blood will not become that acidic anymore, and that case the muscle blood flow will increase, and this is called as active hyperemia. During muscle flow or muscle activity, the blood flow is basically getting increased by a couple of folds. Okay, it can increase up to 10 folds. What about brain? So brain cannot, it is not possible that brain is not receiving any blood flow. If it does, then it can become a stroke. So it always have to maintain a blood flow, which is about, on an average, it's at about 750 ml a minute. Okay. Control mechanism, of course, metabolic situations will control blood flow in brain. For example, like decreased pH or increased carbon, like basically pH, carbon dioxide, these factors are important. So if this is pH is too much decreased or carbon dioxide too much high, that means the blood is becoming acidic in brain, and that is again fatal. So therefore then our vessels will start dilating, so that vasodilation can happen, more blood can be drawn into brain at that time. Skin actually functions blood flow through skin. It is pretty important, and it is heavily full with vessels. Skin, why? Because skin with the vessel supplies nutrients to cells. It is very important for maintaining our body temperature through skin and these blood vessels. So we have learned about this in 208. Whenever we are whenever there is an increased body temperature, then our vessels vasodilate so that we can release the extra temperature, extra heat. And then also skin is basically, with all these vessels, it is also a blood reservoir. Lots of vessels are there in our skin. Lungs. So lungs is associated with pulmonary circuit, starting from heart to lungs. It's a short circuit, of course. It is supplied with arterioles, veins, venules, everything. But the blood pressure is pretty low, 24 to by 10 mmHg, versus in systemic blood pressure we already know 120 by 80. So pretty low pressure is maintained. Autoregulatory mechanism. Low oxygen level means there will be again vasoconstriction, and high levels will promote, basically high oxygen level will promote vasodilation, which will allow blood flow to oxygen rich areas of lungs. In heart, we know this is called as coronary circulation within the heart, right? So during ventricular systole, means during contraction again, coronary vessels are obviously compressed when the heart is contracting as a whole. And as a result of this, the myocardial, like the blood flow within the heart, that also ceases for a little bit, right? And stores myoglobin. There are certain myoglobin molecules, certain proteins that actually supplies the sufficient oxygen at this time. During diastole, when it's like not contracting or relaxing mode, high aortic pressure forces blood through the coronary circulation like any other organ. But at rest, coronary blood flow, when rest means when it is not in contraction phase, heart never really rests. So the blood flow is approximately 250 ml a minute. Okay. But during strenuous exercise, this can change. Blood flow will increase 3 to 4 times, because only the cardiac cells in that case, because cardiac cells are the one that are responsible for the pumping action, not the other cells that's present in heart. So in that case, when heart is pumping more, so you have increased body activity, means heart is pumping more blood, 65% of the blood will be delivered to those cardiac cells, as opposed to only 20-25% will be delivered to other cells. So again, with exercise, blood flow is redirected. Again, always remember, wherever we are redirecting blood flow, that's okay. But in our body, the MAP, the mean arterial pressure, is always maintained, because if there is an imbalance, that could be super fatal for us. So it doesn't matter your heart's blood flow is increased or blood flow in the skeletal muscle is increased, MAP is still in balance. Capillary exchange. What is capillary exchange? So we do know capillary exchange happens with the capillaries. Okay, so and why is it important? Because in this way we actually exchange, when blood is in the capillaries, in that way we actually exchange nutrients, gases within our tissue level, in the cellular level, and that is achieved with the help of capillaries. Okay, but velocity across the capillaries changes as blood travels through systemic circulation. We do know that velocity is highest in the aorta, increases in veins, kind of in the middle, but really slow also in capillaries, right? Capillaries have largest area, means capillary is spread across all across our body, right? In every single part of our body, it is rich with capillaries. Therefore, it has the slowest flow. Okay, and this actually allows adequate time for blood exchange when blood and like exchange of blood between tissue and then the capillaries itself. All right, so for example, you see aorta, if you see in terms of square centimeter in body, aorta has a really slow, like really it takes a small chunk of our body's area, but velocity is super high because blood flows really fast. But in capillaries, they are spread all across our body, so therefore they have a high area that they're occupying in our body, but the blood flow is really slow. This kind of in the middle in the veins or venules. So what is this capillary exchange? Capillary exchange simply means capillary exchange of what? Capillary exchange of nutrients and respiratory gases happens. This is the capillary, and then it is exchanging stuffs with the cells, with the interstitial cells, right? It can be any cell. So what are the mechanisms? They do approximately 4 ways they do it. Either diffusion through plasma membrane directly, for example, lipid soluble substance from the blood to the cells, or movement through intracellular clefts. There are small gaps through that, which would be mostly water soluble substance, or movement through fenestration means certain gaps, which is again water soluble substances. Transport via vesicles, which would be larger substances. So these are the way. Okay. Now, what about bulk flow? Bulk flow means that fluid is forced out of cleft of the capillaries and then basically returns to blood at the venous end, right? So, what is bulk flow? It is the amount of blood that is forced out of the capillaries and again then returns. That's basically so how this balance of maintenance of the blood that is thrown out of the capillaries and coming back, that balance is need to be maintained, and that flow is basically the bulk flow. Okay, two important pressures are two important points, two important things are important here, or two opposite forces are important here. One is hydrostatic pressure, another is the osmotic pressure or colloid osmotic pressure. So how does it work? This is how. So suppose this is the capillary end of capillary, and then this is the interstitial fluid of a cell. So maintenance of net filtration pressure of the bulk flow is important. And what is this thing? It is basically the amount of, in general, if I have to say in simpler words, an amount of fluid that is exiting the capillary minus the amount that is entering. So whatever is maintained, that is the maintained in between, whatever remains, that is the NFP. So what are these terms? HPC, for example, this one, hydrostatic pressure in the capillary. That means that the fluid that is pushed out of the capillary. All right. If you sum it up with OPIF, which is the osmotic pressure, that means in interstitial fluid pulls fluid out of capillary again. So the interstitial fluid will pull fluid out of. So whatever is getting out of the capillary either through normal hydrostatic pressure or whatever is the interstitial fluid is taking out of the capillary, right? That is called as the osmotic pressure. So whatever is moving out minus whatever is moving in. So HPIF means hydrostatic pressure interstitial fluid that pushes fluid into the capillary. So interstitial fluid means the water that is in, or the interstitial fluid that is in the cells, that will actually push the that can actually create a push to the capillaries because they're directly related, like too much closely associated. So it can actually push fluid in the capillary or pull out. So HPIF, therefore, whatever it will pull inside, plus OPC means osmotic pressure in the capillary itself, or that is the pulls fluid into the capillary. In other words, simply whatever is getting in the capillary minus whatever getting outside of the capillary. So that is called net filtration pressure. Okay, so that's how we calculate it, and it is important to maintain this bulk flow within the capillaries. And the net flow is out at the arterial end, typically, that is called filtration, and net flow in is generally happens in the venous end of the capillaries, which is reabsorption. If there is an abnormal increase in the amount of interstitial fluid, for example, if this particular process increases too much, in that case, then fluid will be accumulated inside, and that could be caused by edema or swelling. All right, an increase in the capillary hydrostatic pressure also increase in the capillary hydrostatic pressure also can increase. For example, simply means more fluid being put inside the capillaries, then the capillaries will start accumulating this fluid inside, and that condition is called as edema. Little bit of edema is okay, but if it's too much, then it can cause different kinds of problem. For example, blood vessels, first of all, the blood vessel can get blocked, or this can be a result of incompetent venous valves, which means too much blood is present in the capillaries. That's why the venous valve is not able to push the blood through the vein. As a result, too much of blood is remaining in the capillary region. Naturally, that is getting into the capillaries and then it is starting to accumulate more fluid inside the capillaries. As a result, there will be inflammation. So that is called as edema. Okay, so we will then continue from here on Monday. This is the part 3 of the last part. Watch this video and keep working on your concept checks. All right, see you Monday.